to QI, where we bring you a television first, a quiz show with no answers. Yes, tonight we depart from the certainties of everyday life to explore the realm of hypothetical questions. Or do we? It's a job for only the very finest minds, by which I mean the potential Johnny Vegas, the possible Sandy Toksvig, and the increasingly unlikely Alan Davis. Now, tonight is the 99th recording of QI, and to celebrate, we have with us the man who thought it all up in the first place. He can dish it out, but let's see if he can take it. Mr. John Lloyd! Wow. They all have appropriately quizzical buzzers. Sandy goes... Johnny goes... John goes...
Ooh,
And Alan goes...
Oh, sir, I know, me, sir.
As if. And let's open our minds now to the possibilities of question one. What's the best way to weigh your own head? Any thoughts?
Well, cut it off, obviously, would be the
Yes,
most
but
accurate way.
then someone else could weigh it, but you couldn't, you see? That would be the problem. You wouldn't... And the question was...
Because you introduced us, and I normally introduce me last.
Yeah.
It slightly caught me out, and I was applauding myself. Alan Davis!
That's what...
And I was applauding myself insincerely.
That's what Soviet leaders do, isn't it? Or chimpanzees. Yeah. One or the other. Yeah.
Why would you want to weigh your own head? It's a sort of a boys' thing, isn't it? You can imagine some poor woman married to a scientist and she's at home and she's wormed the dog and fed the children and got everything sorted and her husband gets home and goes, "Good news, dear, I've weighed my own head."
I grant you, it may not seem like the most useful thing to do, but it does employ interesting scientific ideas on which we all depend.
Is it that thing that David Frost used to tell that joke for years and years? The, do you want to lose 12 pounds of unsightly fat? Cut off your head.
Was that his joke?
He used to tell that a lot, yeah.
What is one of the most famous ancient moments of scientific discovery?
Well, it's the
Archimedes.
bath.
Is it Archimedes in the bath?
Archimedes in the bath. Now, tell me, what did Archimedes do and why did he...
So would you just put your head in the bucket?
Oh, right. Oh, is that right?
I have no idea.
Yes, join in.
I was going to weigh myself, go to the swimming baths.
Yeah.
Right, and bob, and then get people to feed me until I sank. And then come back out and weigh myself again.
Yeah.
And
That sounds much more scientific.
So by displacement of the water, you can tell.
Yeah, you take a big bucket and you fill it full of water and you drop your head in, and because water and the density of your head are about the same, you get a very close approximation by the amount of water that you displace.
You could put apples in to make it
You could bob for apples to make it fairer, yes.
And what did your head weigh when you tried this?
What would you say is the average weight? The University of Sydney has a department where they weigh heads quite a lot, and they have a pretty good
By
average.
dunking them in buckets, do they?
They don't actually dunk them in buckets.
Is it 12 pounds?
It's 4.5 to 5 kilos, which is...
I have no idea.
Well, that's
5 kilos is 11
kilos.
Yeah. Not far. Yeah. 2.2...
It's about 12 pounds.
Yeah, it's about 12 pounds. Well done. I'm going to give you a point for 12 pounds, John.
I think they'd have negotiated some points.
Surely you should give those points to David Frost, who thought of the 12 pounds in the first place.
Well, that's true. Or
If
who's
only
right
he
he
hadn't
did.
cut his head off.
Yeah.
What if you get an air pocket in your ears?
A pocket.
You know, the air pockets?
Yes, but the air cavities are cancelled out
Take your
by
fingers out,
the...
you won't hear the answer.
The bones, you have bones that are denser than water and air pockets that are lighter than water, and together it does seem that the head averages about water, so it's a good displacement test. But there is a modern piece of technology that can do it to frightening degrees of accuracy.
Bound to be a laser or something like that.
No, it's a CAT scan, a CT, and they can tell the density of every little tiniest part of the brain and the skull and all the rest of it, and tot it all up.
My dad's got heavy eyes.
Has he now?
Yeah.
Have you weighed his eyes? Or
No, we've not weighed him, but he's very fearful of leaning forward.
Do they come
It's a
out?
sleigh. He doesn't like...
Crash through his
He doesn't like leaning forward. He thinks they're going to come out.
Like on springs, like those things you can buy?
No, we got rid of novelty, Dad. This is mental, Dad.
Do you know, my grandfather had 2 glass eyes, and yet he could see. So what happened was he's sad. He lost one eye, but he wasn't careless. He was ill, and he had a glass eye made, which was perfect, exactly like his other perfectly working blue Scandinavian eye. And then he had one made that was bloodshot, and it was known as Grandpa's party eye. And he kept it in a box on the mantelpiece. And when he was going out for the evening, he'd take out the false blue one, he'd put in the bloodshot one, and he'd say, "I'm going out now, and I shan't be back till they match."
Oh, that's brilliant! That's brilliant. Fantastic. And I seem to remember you
I
telling
thought
me...
he had 2 glass eyes like that.
I know, that would be silly.
Did he have a hole at the back where somebody put that? Was your granddad Nookie Burr?
On the subject of heads, do you know anything about Sir Francis Drake? No, I don't mean Sir Francis Drake. But as I've mentioned him, do you know anything about him?
Something to do with bowling.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He was in the Navy.
Let's move on from
Navy
Francis
man.
Drake. Thanks for ringing up. What do you know about Sir Walter Raleigh?
He invented the bicycle.
His wife carried his head around in a bag for more than
Excellent.
30 years after he died.
Excellently
A velvet
correct.
bag.
In a velvet
it was.
A
bag.
red velvet bag, yes. Sir Walter was executed. And,
See why John had to invent a show for this kind of information.
Yes, exactly.
Carries around with him.
You carried around much as Lady Raleigh carried around the head.
It was on Buzzcocks last week.
Was it?
What sort of a bag? Was it a sealed bag? Like
It was a sort of velvet...
like a cool box?
I don't know. People did keep heads. There was an Archbishop of Canterbury who was killed in the Peasants' Revolt, and they've still got his head in a church in Sudbury. Where
Just the skull.
for hundreds
now,
of, there it is.
Oh.
Well, now the flesh has rotted off, obviously, but it's been there continuously since he was
So
killed.
as it rots away, you just empty the bag out and rinse it and pop it back in.
Nature helps. The flies and the maggots eat it all up, and it's the bacteria. It's all very...
I bet it was a few years before anybody wanted to sit next to her at dinner.
Oh, no, Lady Raleigh, I'm
Yes,
sure
do you
that's
not
true.
think?
Oh, I'm sure.
People go, "Oh, she's not going to bring the head, is she?"
Very fine. Don't know how we got there, but like many of the questions in tonight's show, there's no one correct answer, but dunking your head in a bucket might be a good start. And if that hasn't got you scratching your head, when might you engage in paradoxical undressing? It's a known thing, paradoxical undressing. It's a phrase that is used. It's not made up by us.
So you're undressing, but you're actually dressing.
No, it's not really
Is
paradoxical.
it physics or some physics or mathematics?
No,
Is it counterintuitive undressing?
that's much more what it is.
So taking your clothes off if Jeremy Clarkson asks you would be
Meow.
silly.
It's taking your clothes off when taking your clothes off looks like the worst possible idea you could have.
Is it some effect of hypothermia? Is it some
It's
mental
exactly what it
thing
is.
that does to you?
It may be mental, it may be physical. It's not quite understood, but one of the...
Oh, that is very unpleasant.
Yes.
Let me go back to the previous picture.
Yeah, it's one of the peculiar side effects of hypothermia when you're actually dying of cold.
You feel
one
hot.
of almost the last thing you do, very commonly, not always, is take all your clothes off. And people think it may be a delusional thing, but it also is part of the fact that your blood vessels near your skin tend to just give up and open. And it may be that people feel very hot. Because you never survive once you've got to that stage, you can't actually ask someone why they did it. But it is a common thing for people to do, and they're
I went in
freezing.
freezing water once in New Zealand, and I screamed a lot and swam about a bit, and then I got out and I was completely shocking, livid pink, and felt hot.
Well,
so
there
that was
you are.
perhaps seconds from death then.
Maybe you were. Maybe you're one of the few who survived it.
Yeah.
Well, what sort of temperature do you think would start you on the road to hypothermia? Body temperature, I don't mean outside temperature.
What's the temperature in here?
Really, I'd say pretty quickly. I don't think you'd have to drop much, maybe 4 or 5 degrees below normal body
Basically, that's
temperature.
right, 35 degrees Celsius, once your body temperature starts to get below that. And interestingly, in the coldest cities in the world, hypothermia is very rare. It's much more common in places like Britain, where it doesn't get very cold at all. There's a very remarkable Briton called Lewis Pugh. Have you heard of Lewis Pugh? He's a man who's able to control his own body temperature. He does endurance cold swimming. As far as we know, he's the only person known to science who can do what he can do. He can swim in cold conditions unlike anybody else, and he is able to raise his body temperature at will. It's completely startling. He can stop himself shivering. He is really an incredible figure, and we contacted him. And he said that he thought he could do this...
he's not coming in here because it's free.
He said he thought he could do this because he had trained himself, as it were, over years and years and years to do these endurance swims in incredibly cold waters. And then his body, as it were, saw it coming and prepared for it. That was his only explanation. But
cold water has a bad effect on a boy. I mean, he looks good there. I bet he doesn't fill his swimming trunks when he gets there.
Well, maybe that.
But actually, this is not that unusual. We went on this yoga thing recently, and the yoga teacher was saying that these sadhus in India can do this body-raising thing. And in fact, they do it. They did some scientific experiments in the States where they shipped in these guys, you know, little wiry guys with turbans on, and they put wet towels on them, and they'd turn up their own body temperature, and they would literally steam the towels dry in a few minutes. Extraordinary.
Can you hire these people?
Yeah.
Well, a good act. They get on Britain's Got Talent.
That'd be really good.
Don't you?
What are you going to do? I'm going to dry this wet towel.
You could do patterns on wet towels with your hand. It's art. I thought that if you're going into cold, you need to lower your body temperature so it wasn't such a shock. So that's why they say have a cold drink in a cold place and a hot drink in a hot place. So you're inside and outside.
Yes, it does seem likely, but I think for his
the SAS just wrong about it.
Yeah, but maybe for the extremes that he goes under, it's more important for him to stay warm.
But why don't people, when they do that sauna thing and they jump into the snow, why don't people get hypothermia then? Is it because they're not in it long enough?
They're not in it long enough. Okay. I think that's the point, yeah.
Also, they're pissed, usually.
Because they're Scandinavian.
Scandinavian. We can't resist a drink, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Very true. Anyway, paradoxically, the last thing people do when they're freezing to death is to take all their clothes off. But how can I tell if I am actually dead?
Well, now.
How can one tell if a person is actually dead?
A room full of people are cheering. If it was me. The 20-year-old Maltese being broken out.
No, we would all weep at your death.
And you can feel someone putting a pen in my hand and just going, rewriting my will.
You mean the vital signs don't count? Is that what we're going to set the ringer off?
No, I'm not. It so happens it is a very moot point. There's the difference between legal death and medical death. There's also, it's quite recent. In the 1830s in France, there were about 30 different symptoms, if you can call them that people thought were determining symptoms of death. But nobody could be sure whether somebody was dead or not, so they held a prize, quite a big prize, over 1,000 francs, for the person who could come up with the best way of determining if a person was dead.
They're watching EastEnders without reaching to turn it off.
Unfortunately, it just predated the first episode of EastEnders, 1830. The prize wasn't given till 1848, and even when it was awarded, most of the medical establishment refused to believe the winner, who was a young medical chap.
The Victorians used to use a trembling scarab. They used to use it. It looked like a little scarab with sort of legs on it, and they used to put it on the head of somebody and watch to see if it moved, because the person would... And if it didn't move, that was...
There were lots of things like that. I mean, these were some of the ideas that didn't win. Sticking a thermometer into the stomach to see if the patient was cool enough to be dead. Attaching pincers to the nipples.
Oh!
Scalding the patient's arm with boiling water to see if a blister appeared.
They try all of these on one person.
They didn't know...
He's alive! Burn him!
They did know about comas, so they knew that people could sometimes appear to be incredibly dead and not respond to pain. So they knew that just pain wasn't enough. So that was the blister forming. Putting leeches on a corpse's bottom, apparently, was one way.
This just sounds like a typical day of my mum, getting me up for school.
Sticking a long needle into the heart with a flag on the end, and they knew that if the flag waved... That is such a sweet method. But this is, I'm talking about the 1830s. No, it's not so long ago, really.
You just put a mirror there to see if...
The most common method that had been used throughout history is, as you say, to put a mirror in front of and if it misted up, that was the one, because you can't always hear the breath. But there was a device that had been invented in the 1840s that caused this young fellow, Bouchu, who won the prize, suggested the use of this device, which was...
Stethoscope?
A stethoscope, to listen to see if the heart beat. It seems so obvious to us, but lots of brilliant people, it never occurred to them that the sound of the heart might be the determining
They
factor.
feared it enormously, Victor. Hans Christian Andersen used to sleep with a sign next to his bed that said, "I'm not dead, I'm asleep."
Yes, that's
he
right.
was terrified.
And there were coffins with bells inside that people could ring in case they woke up. They were terrified of being buried alive.
Rather than a bell, they should just give them a saw and a spade.
Yes. You're a cruel man, but fair.
Well,
Alan
you're
Davis.
ringing away down there. You could be
There were special hospitals. They
You'd
changed...
go out the side, wouldn't you? Would you go out the top or the side? I'd go out the side.
Yeah, the side.
'Cause it would all fall in on you.
I know, the weight's down there, because you think that's the way a coffin lid is attached. You therefore think the logical thing is to push it up. I
No,
think
you
the side
got a
is...
saw at the side and then kind of go up sort of gradually. Don't go straight up.
You've thought
There's
this
actually
through,
a word
Alan.
for it.
I might also say, oh, bugger, I chose cremation. That's the other one. How do I reassemble these ashes?
That is why we Vikings put them in a boat and then set fire to it. We're doubly sure. Off you go.
That's true.
But there's an actual word for it, isn't the fear of being buried alive, isn't there? Because the 18th century clown Grimaldi had a pathological fear of being buried alive, and he specified in his will that when he died, they were to cut off his head before burying him, to be quite sure that he wouldn't have to ring the little bell.
He wasn't just weighing it.
It's a very,
in a bucket.
very Edgar Allan Poe type thing as well, isn't it? Being walled up alive is a classic fear. And so in Germany in particular, where they, for some reason, were most afraid of this late in the 18th and early in the 19th century, they actually had warm mortuaries to encourage putrefaction, so the smell said that he's definitely dead, because, whoa, that is very smelly. But it's not as obvious as we might think, is the point.
So if you had really bad personal hygiene, but you weren't actually dead...
Yes, it could be. That would be a problem.
He stinks, he must be dead. Walking around, he's talking, he's dead.
But the fear of death is thanatophobia, of course, but the fear of being buried alive is taphophobia. T-A-P-H-O phobia. But now it's time for a round of quick-fire hypotheticals.
Quickfire Hypotheticals!
So, all you have to do is tell me the first thing that comes into your head, basically, all right? It's a quick-fire hypothetical question. Let's say you found a fallen tree in the forest, right? Obviously, it fell down before you arrived, but did it make a sound as it fell?
Ooh,
No.
Well, no one's going to say yes.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, do you know where this question comes from, as it were?
It's a
Bishop
famous...
Berkeley.
Bishop Berkeley, yeah.
Philosophical question, isn't it?
So that if there's no one to hear a sound,
Is there a sound?
is there a sound? It depends so much what you mean by sound, doesn't it?
Well, there isn't, because sound is the vibration of the eardrum. There is no sound
Is
if
it?
there's no one to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends, though, because part of the definition of sound is that there has to be a recipient for the sound.
Yeah.
Isn't there? There's the thing that makes the noise, and there's the transmission of the noise, and then there's the reception of the noise.
Yeah.
But if there's no reception of the noise, then maybe the noise doesn't exist.
Other things are still vibrating, but whether that vibration counts as a sound or not is
But
a...
when's the forest
That's the
ever
definition
empty?
of sound, is what happens in the ear. There isn't any sound if there's no one to hear it.
It's a mooty point.
There's a speed of
Yeah.
sound, and it's only what happens in the ear. Well, how do you get that speed between that and your ear?
Do you know,
Maybe by the time that tree's fallen, you got there, that sound's halfway around the world and making someone else very nervous. Ah!
So, Stephen, are you sure about this?
Well, no one is sure. That is the point. That's why it's a hypothetical. No one knows. I mean, to a semanticist or a neurologist, they may say that sound is that, but to a physicist, they would say the propagation of sound waves is sound. Whether or not there is an ear to vibrate, it is a sound wave. And if it's a sound wave...
I disagree that they are sound waves, because if you go...
You may disagree, but you're welcome to. But you're
They're
not...
vibrations,
you're
but
not
they only become a sound wave when there's an ear to receive it. It's rather like...
In your-
Do you remember we talked about a thing that really astonished me? Did you know that light's invisible? It's the most extraordinary thing. If you, in a dark vacuum, if you shoot a beam of light across the eyeballs like that, you can't see it. Because
Yeah,
you
but
can
what
only
about
see what
sound?
light hits. And it's the same thing, but people said, but that's a stupid answer because the definition of light is something that goes into your eye and is then received. Until it does that, it's not light.
But we have all kinds of things like not ears, for example. Are you saying that it's not sound if it registers on a recording device that is left there without a human there? That it's bending the needle of a recording device? Does the machine not hear? Is it not a sound wave that is actually causing the machine to register?
Well, but in Bishop Berkeley, so...
I talked about you, not about Bishop Berkeley
Yes.
entering a field. The point is, it's not as simple as just to say yes or no.
God,
That's why
Steve,
it's a
go
good
on,
question.
you've got it!
It's a good question. We would have unfairly forfeited someone who said yes just as much as somebody who
I
said
thought
no.
you said there was no right answer to this.
There is no... That's why I said there is. That's why it's a good question. There is no right answer. So your yes and your no are both... That's
I bet it made a head.
Whatever I said, it would have been...
Yeah, I'm afraid
So
so.
if the tree fell down and there was no one there to see it fall, it should still be upright.
Very true.
My only conclusion...
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Alan, are you keeping well?
Yeah.
But Alan,
But that
Alan...
tree fell over,
Anyway.
it was a hell of a bang.
Yeah. It's a quick-fire hypothetical, don't forget, so we move on. OK. All right. You're talking to an
I
alien...
can't do quick fire.
Yes, you can, darling.
If a quick-fire hypothetical round takes a really long time, is it still a quick-fire?
Good point. We'll find out. Very good point. You're talking to an alien in a distant galaxy by radio. How could you explain which is right and which is left?
Breaker, breaker.
That would do it, wouldn't it? Just by saying breaker, breaker, he would know.
Well, it depends what height mast he had, but yeah, he should.
It's nice to be talking...
There's got to be alien truckers.
Yeah. It's a fair point. They must move
I'll tell him
freight.
what's left and right, and if he's got a smoky on his ass.
Right.
Wouldn't it be a very boring conversation because the nearest galaxy is, what, 4 light years away?
I think we'd have to use the word hypothetical about it, for example. So it's a hypothetical
It's
conversation.
hypothetically, are we looking at any common reference point?
That's the point. You can't...
Can you see Mars? Yeah, well, we're on the right. Can you see the spot on Jupiter?
Yes, you'd have to have something to reference.
That's the point. You can't... Semantically, there is no explanation for left or right without reference to a physical world that someone can identify. You can't explain it just by language. That is really the point of the question.
Well, if they visited in a ship, you could give them a temporary tattoo.
Yes, you could do that,
Left
which is
and
why
right.
we framed the question so specifically, saying that
Or talking on a
temporary
radio.
tattoos were out.
Ah, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm just a
remote galaxy.
problem solver by nature.
No, it's good.
Anyway, they might not have, because we always draw them in that shape with 2 eyes. What if they've got 4 eyes and 8 arms and they don't have 1
Yes.
or 2 things?
Yeah.
Exactly. They may not be symmetrical in any way. Yep.
They might have other dimensions and all sorts.
Yeah, they might have 19 versions of left.
Yeah.
Yes?
Can you imagine that in a
right
sat nav? Left-ish!
Not that one. Not that one. That one.
Why do we always draw them like that?
I have no
It's so
idea.
strange. They might just have 1 eye in the middle of their head.
Yes. Certainly the ones that probe me look nothing like that.
Do you have a little thing in your head which is a mnemonic for when you forget which is left or right temporarily? Do you do that?
I walk into traffic. Sort out straight away.
Yeah. Why, do you have a problem?
I do. No, I don't. But if I have to think, well, I remember the thumb I used to suck when I was a very small child. That's my right hand. Is no
Like
one
a
else have
therapy
this?
session, this. It's a wonderful story about a famous ocean liner captain, and he had a little silver box that he kept in his pocket, and every time before they came into port, he would open up the little silver box and he would look and push it away. And after many, many years' service, when he finally died, his second-in-command said, I just must have a look in the silver box and see what it is. And he opened up the box and it said, port, left, starboard, right.
That's brilliant.
You won't get that right, though, don't you?
Yes, that's the point, though. You can't really find out. So, our next hypothetical. Take someone who has been blind from birth, right, and let him or her handle a sphere and a cube. And then there's a new operation that amazingly comes and restores their sight. And you show them the sphere and the cube. Will they be able to tell which is which just by looking, having felt each.
Do you think it's the first thing they'd want to do?
No, that's why it's hypothetical, but it has been done. It is really interesting because
the answer is no, they can't. The
What
information that their eyes tell them is a meaningless junk. For quite a while.
Exactly right.
Because
Exactly
one's
right.
tactile and one's sensory. It would be completely
Yes,
different.
but that's right. But to us, it seems so obvious that perhaps we overlook how used we are to relating the feel of a corner to the look of a corner.
This is cutting-edge neuroscience, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
there was a case recently where somebody had been blind for, I don't know, years and years and years, and they restored his sight, and he was able to see his own children for the first time in years, and he literally didn't recognise them. It was like, you know, fuzzy lines. It took 2 weeks or something for him to realise, to assemble the information.
They
So it
took
made
the
sense.
beards and the cats. Sorry, I couldn't resist it. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance.
Have you done the reverse thing, which is to go to that... There's a restaurant where it's completely dark.
I went to one in Berlin called Noctia, I think it is, yes, where it's absolutely blind. Did you, have you... What?
No, I haven't, but I mean to go, because it's really extraordinary. And it's blind people who serve you, so
Yes,
they walk
that's right.
around
The
with great
waiters are all
ease,
blind.
and you can't see anything at all. And I would imagine, does it make a difference to how you eat things? I'd imagine, I don't
Yeah.
mean that you miss your mouth, but I mean that it tastes different.
Yes, it does. That's really the point. They talk you through the food, they tell you, and you feel it, and you smell it, and you use all these other things that you usually forget to use when you're eating food because you're looking at people and talking to them, and you just look down and see how well arranged it is. But instead, it's quite animal. The weird thing is going to the loo, of course. This waiter takes you by the hand, and you kind of threads you through the tables. You go into a closed passageway, closes one door, which is into the restaurant, so that stays dark, and then he opens the other door towards where the loos are, and he doesn't actually take the old chap out or anything like that. So that would be a bit cheeky.
Unless you tip him very well.
Unless you tip him very well.
You can go to Little Chef and you're served by people with complete indifference. It's an amazing
Surely
sort
not
of
since,
experience.
not since
yeah.
Heston Blumenthal took
Surely
over.
not.
Yeah. So, that's quite right, John. Absolutely spot on. Now, a lorry load of birds are being weighed on a weighbridge. At some moment, all the birds simultaneously rise off their perches and flap in the air.
So they're all alive? They're all
Oh, yeah, they're all alive,
right.
yeah. Does the lorry weigh less when they rise up in the air?
Yes.
No.
Well, only if they...
Got a yes and a no?
So they're not in contact with the actual
No.
thing, so no, it would
Don't
weigh
they-
less.
No,
Is it sealed, the lorry?
It's a closed, it's got a tailgate, it's all locked up. They're inside the lorry, you can't see them. That's just
But wouldn't there be pressure from the air?
Yeah.
It's not. They don't. It weighs the same, and it's got something
Yes.
to do. It's something very similar to if you weigh yourself and then you go and do a number 2 and weigh yourself again, you don't lose the weight of the number 2.
Now, there we're in a slightly different territory. I was so proud of you. I was so
I will
giving
crap
you...
on the scales.
You're right. The answer is not to poo on the scale.
No.
Leave the scales, do the number 2, come back to
What?
You don't lose
You don't,
do,
you
of
don't
course
lose
you
it
do.
when you...
Of course you do.
money I've wasted on animals.
I know, no, I know. I hear this, but no, it doesn't. It weighs the same, and I can't remember the reason why. I know this.
So they all lift off at exactly the same
Yeah.
time?
Now, the fact is, it is weighing. It's a bird, the bird
Where does the
lorry
egg-
system. It's there in the... I know it's weird.
Is it
but
sealed? Is it to do with it being sealed?
Yeah.
Because if you're carrying a bowling
The dis-
ball and you're on the scales and then you throw the bowling ball in the air...
Yeah. It's you're part of
it'll
something when
kill
you're
you,
inside
no,
it.
Yeah, well, because it's sealed,
And the air's moving... Exactly.
you and the air have
Yeah.
created that weight. So whatever the birds put themselves within
Yes.
there, it still weighs the same.
But the interesting question, and you're absolutely right, I mean, you can sort of test
Don't
it.
pass it off that easily.
Yeah. But the interesting question is if it's an open-top lorry and they're all sitting on the perch and they jump up, and they jump up slightly higher, and then they're actually out of the system, they're no longer part of the lorry bird system, then it would be lighter. Well, there we are. Well done, everybody. That was perhaps now it's time to move on from our hypotheticals.
That was very quick.
So, hypothetical problems are, of course, the curse of the practical man, but how do curses work?
Well, someone curses you and you think that you've been cursed, so you change your own behaviour and bring about your own downfall.
That's kind of more or less precisely right. It's a negative version of what effect?
The placebo effect.
Yes, it is indeed. There is
I'm on the wrong show. Should be on Mastermind.
You should.
Are you saying it only works if you believe it?
Yes. It's like a placebo. It's actually called the nocebo effect. N-O-C-E-B-O, as in noxious, as in harm. I will harm nocebo in Latin.
So if I made a voodoo doll of Johnny and I stuck pins in it, it wouldn't work unless I sent him a sort of picture on his phone to show I'd done it.
Yes, and he believed, of course, that, the point is you have to believe it.
Yeah, you have to get a good likeness.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Peter Kay would be rolling around in pain.
That would never do. Now, other curses, do you know what the 27 Club is? There's a curse, supposedly?
Something to do with nearing your 30th birthday? Feeling...
Yes, it is.
Oh,
It's
is
a
it?
particular age, 27, that seems to resonate in popular cultural history.
Is it people who died at 27?
Yes, can you name some who died at 27? It's quite a...
James Dean or someone like that?
Or is it older than that? Is
He's
it,
older than that.
Jim Morrison?
Younger than that.
Yeah,
Stones
Jim Morrison,
guy.
Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin.
Whoa.
Yeah. More.
Sid Vicious.
Kurt Cobain.
Brian Jones?
And Brian Jones, in fact, yes. And Robert Johnson of Crossroads fame.
All 27, really?
They're all aged 27.
Old enough to develop enough of an intolerance to something to keep doing too much of it.
To keep doing too much.
And young enough to be stupid enough to keep doing too much of it.
Probably right.
It's the late 20s. It's
Yeah.
a very hazardous age.
It is, clearly. Do you know about the curse of the 9th? Would that be?
They all died on the 9th.
No.
This is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
Is that a Roman legion?
Not a Roman legion, the eagle of the 9th, not that. No, it's symphonies.
Oh, yes, you're not supposed to write more than 9. You're supposed to... You're not
Well,
write...
it's not we're supposed to,
I
but
mean,
it's a large... Or
Beethoven wrote 9 and then popped off.
They finish a
all the
9th and you
unfinished
die while writing the 10th.
10th,
Happened
yeah.
to Dvorak and Beethoven and Bruckner and Schubert.
What an unusual serial killer that was.
So that's the curse of the
I know
9th.
that had CSI Vienna.
The nocebo effect is the placebo effect's evil cousin. Now, hypothetically, what would happen if Schrödinger put a Siamese cat in the fridge?
In the fridge?
Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't know if it was alive or dead.
Oh, good. You're referring to Schrödinger's cat, which is...
Yeah, I'd learned about this on Horizon.
Very good.
You don't know until you open the door, do you, whether the cat is alive?
That is the sort of quantum paradox of Schrödinger's cat, yes.
You're putting the Siamese cat in the fridge.
Yeah.
What is the question?
What would happen to the cat? It would get cold.
It would get
What
cold.
would happen to the fridge? There'd be less milk left, probably.
It would eat all the tuna melt.
All the tuna melt would go, yes. But something quite extraordinary would happen.
It would turn into an ordinary cat.
Well, almost.
Dog.
Almost.
Turn into a dog.
No, no. Nor is it that remarkable.
In seconds.
No. What do you... Let's have a look at the
Someone
Siamese
talks about
cat
their
and see what's particular about it.
White body, black face. Ah, so
Black
it gets
face
a black
and-
body and a white face.
It's got a white body and a black tail and black ears and
And
black
black
mouth and
socks.
black socks. In other words, black extremities. What is particular about the extremities of any mammal?
They're cold,
Oh.
right?
So if you put the whole animal in a fridge,
Right.
Yeah.
It goes black.
it goes black, Johnny. You're
That's
absolutely
death,
right.
though, isn't it? Yeah.
There. That's what happens.
Oh,
Its fur has this peculiar colourant that keeps it pale in warm blood heat, but there's only a small difference in temperature down, and it will lose the white or gain the black, whichever way you prefer to look at it.
And when you take it out, does it go pale again?
Yes, it will go back to its normal colour again.
would it be
The
worth
same-
trying just for the laugh, wouldn't it? I don't like cats very much. I think, what a fun eve. No, I'm sorry. So many cats, so few recipes. I just think... It sounds like fun.
You can also try it on a Himalayan rabbit. They have the same issue.
To get
Please
hold of.
don't try
Please
to-
don't. No. Do you know about buttered cat?
When you-
There's a recipe straight away.
Buttered cat
Delicious.
syndrome.
Oh, you put butter on their paws to stop them going
There
home
is
when
that.
you've moved house or something.
But this is a kind of paradox, really, because there are two laws, aren't there? One is that if you have a piece of buttered toast and you drop it, what happens?
It falls butter side
It
up.
falls butter side down. And if you drop a cat, what happens to the cat?
Falls butter side up.
No. Careful. It
Lands
falls
on
down.
its feet.
So if you were to put a piece of toast with the butter up and attach it to a cat,
That's very funny.
right, what would happen is the cat would drop and it would have to revolve forever. Because
Then you've got
the
that.
two laws would compete and it would be in total balance.
Would it work with margarine?
I don't know. I think the law doesn't state that the margarine falls downwards.
Well, what about,
cat that really-
I can't believe it's not butter.
What if it was margarine, but the cat believed it was butter?
Ah, the placebo effect. Exactly. Brilliant. Brilliant. You've all got the point.
What if cats discovered this and started to migrate?
Where would they go?
I don't know. It's just a cat with a piece of toast. I'm not going to dictate.
Let's just keep it from them. So, yeah, the point is, if you put a Siamese cat in the fridge for long enough, and actually it would have to be quite a long time, probably weeks, it would go black. And you absolutely mustn't. But after that voyage through a land where there are no wrong answers, we come at last to one where there is rarely a right one, the realm of general ignorance. So put your fingers on your buzzers and tell me, you're on death row, all right? What can you tell me about your last meal?
It's 3 courses.
3 courses?
Yeah, and it's absolutely whatever you want.
No. Not necessarily the case at all that you can order whatever you want. You can only have what they've got in the kitchen.
You know where there's death row in England?
Tell.
It's the Lord's Pavilion.
Yeah.
The seating in the pavilion is unreserved, and so you have to get there pretty early in the morning for the Australian test, for example.
Yeah.
But nowadays, a lot of the MCC members are living to a very old age, and they can't get there at 6. So the oldest, I think there's about 18 seats or something in the row, they have a seat. The oldest, so X number of members. That's called death row. By the stewards.
But you can't even choose what you're going to have for your last supper.
In different states it varies, but in some states there's a $20 budget. In Florida it's a $40 budget.
Unicorn.
Sometimes they're really mean. There was a figure called Philip Workman who asked for a large vegetarian pizza to be given to a homeless person as his last dinner, and the prison officials refused. And after this guy was executed, all kinds of homeless shelters all over Tennessee, the state where it happened, were sent these vegetarian pizzas for homeless people who, by just ordinary Americans who wanted to honour his last wishes. It's rather touching.
That's lovely, but wouldn't it be awful if you were about to die and you've got a very limited menu?
Yeah, I know. And huge portions are pared down, so there was one inmate who requested 24 tacos, and he only got 4.
Oh, it's just...
I know. Isn't it mean? You're not allowed to smoke, even if you want to.
Hardly worth being there.
It almost isn't. It almost isn't. And some of them get very mournful about this. A fellow called Thomas Grasso, his last words in 1995 were, "Please tell the media I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." It's very forlorn, isn't it?
Did they say to you, did you have anything from the minibar last night?
Probably
The last
do.
question.
I'd want a Kinder Egg.
A Kinder Egg, yes.
I'd want, some chocolate, a toy and a surprise.
What's not
Just
to like?
to distract you from death.
Yeah, so would. Anyway, in the USA, most states place strict restrictions on inmates' special meals, as they're called, and in some states, it isn't even their final meal. They actually have it 2 weeks or so before they're executed. So, stop me when you know what I'm talking about now. It's an insectivorous mammal. It's found all around the world. It's active at night. It's almost totally blind.
Yeah.
A bat.
A bat? No. Yeah, you were so right until the last part. Yeah.
Not blind, then.
Anteater, what did you say?
No, not an anteater, no.
A mole.
It's insectivorous, so it could eat ants.
Is it a mole?
A mole is the right answer.
I said mole.
Oh, did you?
I
I'm
just said
sorry.
mole.
Did he say mole, ladies and gentlemen?
No,
you get
because
the point.
sound is just a thing and it didn't try.
Yeah, if you didn't hear me say mole, then I didn't say mole.
So you need the points, I suspect, Alan, after
Yeah,
the
I
bat
think I
thing.
probably
No,
do.
there are about 1,100 different species of bat, and none of them is sightless. Not one is
The
blind.
mole completely sightless, then.
It can just about distinguish between light and dark, but essentially it's blind.
You can tell if the
Certainly a lot-
telly's on or off.
Yes, if you like. It's a lot.
Yeah, you can't tell if it's on standby.
How many moles do you think there are in Ireland?
None.
You're right, there are none. They
Why?
They were very pally with the snakes.
Glaciation and the separation of Ireland from the rest of the place, they never got back because it was then an island.
They could tunnel.
Like snakes, they could tunnel. If any animal could tunnel, it would be a mole.
Oh, sweet, look.
You say sweet, but almost certainly all photographs of moles that are taken are of dead moles. Because they fluff them up And you can't tell because their eyes are always
It's
little
like
black
all those
slits.
greetings card pictures, you know, the cat in a deck chair or a cat hitting the mouse with a spoon. They're all dead.
Yeah. I fear so. Yes, moles are as blind as the proverbial bats. Bats, perversely, aren't. And finally, the ultimate hypothetical question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Chicken.
No! The egg is the right answer, yes. Yes.
There's that wonderful old joke about chicken and egg have just made love. And they're lying there having a bit of a post-coital cigarette. And the chicken says to the egg, well, that answers that old question.
But as the great scientist J.B.S. Haldane said, anyone who can ask that question obviously hasn't understood evolution, because a chicken evolved from reptiles that laid eggs themselves. So those eggs were always coming well before there was a chicken. There were eggs. So it did indeed come first, the egg. What's unique about chickens? Well, there are quite a few things that are unique about them, but the most obvious thing, looking at that, what does it have that no other bird has? Combs. No other animal has those strange combs on the head. It's thought to be something to do with temperature regulation. They cool themselves down by the regulation of blood flow and all that sort of thing. What's the longest recorded flight by a chicken in time terms, not distance?
13 seconds, isn't it? Something like that?
Yes. Yes, it is 13 seconds.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I think we're going to get a record score.
I don't claim that's true, but that is one of the oldest internet pieces of trivia I know, apart from a duck's quack does not echo and no one knows why, which we know isn't true.
No, we know that isn't true. So, anyway, birds evolved from egg-laying reptiles, so there were definitely eggs before there were chickens. So we emerge older, but not much wiser at the end of the only quiz show to offer no answers, just more questions. But had there been answers, let's see who would hypothetically have won. And our theoretical winner tonight with 2 points is Sandy Toksvig! Notionally in second place is Elf Master General John Lloyd with -1. And on paper, in third place with an extremely creditable -7, Johnny Vegas. Finally proving that it's all academic and a dream with -27, Alan Davis. So, that's all from this hypothetical edition of QI. Or is it? Yes, it is. So, it's good night from Sandy, Johnny, John, Alan and me. Good night.
Saturday night on BBC HD. Stand by for regal action with Henry and his new wife. We're bringing back the Tudors next. And right behind at 10:40, Nurse Jackie is back and rebuilding her mess of a life too.